You look so beautiful in that expensive dress, just to go sleep in the dirt. I gave you to a poor nobody, Zaria. You are nothing now.
Keep laughing, Cynthia. Laugh as loud as you can today. Remember this exact moment.
Hey, look at me. Please stop crying. You are safe with me now. I promise I will take care of you.
Cynthia Reynolds stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her pristine estate, a cold, triumphant smile spreading across her face. Down the grand cobblestone driveway, a rusty, dented pickup truck rattled to a halt, coughing a dark cloud of exhaust against the backdrop of towering white columns. The driver's side door creaked open, and out stepped Malik Whitmore. He wore faded work jeans, a stained plaid shirt, and heavy leather boots caked in dried mud. To Cynthia, he was nothing more than a penniless, dirt-poor farmer from the backwoods, the perfect tool for the ultimate humiliation. On the grand steps of the mansion, Cynthia's wealthy friends had already gathered, champagne glasses in hand, waiting for the show. Cynthia had meticulously engineered this entire day to strip her 26-year-old stepdaughter, Zaria Fields, of every ounce of her pride. As Zaria emerged in her white wedding gown, tears streaming down her face, Malik didn't say a word. He calmly walked past the sneering, whispering crowd, lifted his devastated new bride into his arms, and carried her toward the battered truck. The courtyard erupted into cruel, mocking laughter, with Cynthia pointing and jeering from the top of the stairs as the truck sputtered away into the distance. Cynthia truly believed she had just ruined Zaria's life forever. What she didn't know, and what the entire high society crowd couldn't possibly fathom, was the monumental secret Malik carried beneath his dusty cowboy hat. This man, whom they treated like absolute garbage, was the sole owner of the Whitmore Agricultural Group, America's largest Black-owned agricultural empire, a massive corporate syndicate valued at over $750 million. He didn't need Cynthia's approval, and he certainly didn't need her money. Malik had his own reasons for stepping into this viper's nest, and the trap Cynthia thought she was setting for Zaria was actually closing tightly around herself. Before we find out how Cynthia completely destroys Cynthia's cruel scheme from the inside out, take a quick second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We bring you the most intense, emotional stories of moral justice and unforgettable payoffs every single week. You won't want to miss what happens next. Now, let's get right back to the story. To understand the sheer depth of Cynthia's malice, you have to look back 25 years into a dark, forgotten past. As a young college student, Cynthia had fallen deeply in love, a romance that resulted in an unexpected pregnancy. But her wealthy, controlling mother ruthlessly issued a devastating ultimatum: terminate the pregnancy or be cut off from the family fortune forever. Terrified of losing her high society status, Cynthia obeyed. The choice broke something fundamental inside her soul, leaving her emotionally hollow. Years later, doctors delivered a final crushing blow. Cynthia would never be able to conceive again. The grief soured into a toxic, burning rage. She blamed her mother, she blamed her past, she blamed God, and eventually she blamed the entire world. When she later married David Fields, a wealthy widower with a 5-year-old daughter named Zaria, David had practically begged her to be kind. He told her that Zaria didn't need a perfect replacement mother. She just needed someone willing to love her. Cynthia smiled and agreed, but it was a flawless act. Every single time she looked at little Zarya, she didn't see an innocent child. She saw a living, breathing reminder of the life, the youth, and the motherhood that had been stolen from her. She hated the profound, painful emotions Zarya's mere existence awakened inside her. For 20 years, Cynthia wore her mask perfectly while her husband was alive. But the moment David's heart gave out and he passed away, the mask didn't just slip, it shattered completely. With David gone, Cynthia's cruelty became overt, a slow drip of psychological venom designed to erode Zarya's self-worth. "You should have been the one that disappeared," Cynthia would whisper coldly in the quiet, empty hallways of the mansion. "You were always the real mistake." Zarya endured the small, agonizing cuts to her spirit for years, staying in her childhood home only to preserve the memory of her late father. But Cynthia's sudden rush to ruin Zarya wasn't just born out of psychological malice, it was fueled by a massive hidden financial panic. David's original will contained a highly specific, unusual clause that Cynthia had only recently discovered through a legal loophole. Zarya was set to inherit a staggering 50% of the entire Fields estate, but only under one strict condition. She had to remain married until her 30th birthday. If Zarya chose to marry before turning 30, her entire multi-million-dollar inheritance would instantly transfer to David's surviving spouse, Cynthia. Drowning in massive hidden debts from her lavish lifestyle, Cynthia realized she couldn't wait another 4 years for Zarya to turn 30. She needed the girl legally married immediately to trigger the clause and seize her financial dominance. The identity of the groom didn't matter at all. He just needed to be a legal husband. Desperate, Cynthia contacted a shady marriage broker operating in the city's underbelly, demanding the most desperate low-class man available. The broker returned with Malik Whitmore, describing him merely as a struggling independent farmer who needed quick cash and wouldn't ask questions. Cynthia was ecstatic. A poor, unknown farmer was exactly the disposable tool she needed to strip Zarya of her inheritance and secure her own financial dominance. When Cynthia delivered the ultimate choice to Zarya, marry this farmer tomorrow or be thrown onto the streets with absolutely nothing, Zarya looked into her stepmother's cold eyes and realized resisting would change nothing. Broken-hearted and completely unaware of the financial trap she was walking into, Zarya agreed to the marriage just to escape the emotional torture of the mansion. As the rusty pickup truck drove further away from the city, leaving Cynthia's mocking laughter behind, Zarya kept her head down, staring at her lap in absolute silence. She believed her future was completely ruined, entirely unaware that the quiet man driving beside her in the muddy boots was about to change her life forever. The silence inside the cabin of the old pickup truck was heavy, broken only by the rhythmic hum of the tires against the asphalt and the occasional rattle of the loose glove box. Zarya kept her eyes glued to the passenger window, watching the familiar, gleaming skyline of the city gradually shrink into the distance. It was replaced by endless stretches of rolling green hills, dense patches of woodland, and open fields that seemed to go on forever. She clutched her bridal veil tightly in her lap, the delicate white lace contrasting sharply with the cracked, faded vinyl of the truck seat. She felt utterly hollow, trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Beside her, Malik kept his eyes firmly on the road. He didn't try to force a conversation, nor did he offer any empty words of comfort. He simply drove with a calm, unbothered composure that Zarya found both confusing and mildly infuriating. To her, this man was a stranger who had willingly participated in her stepmother's cruel game for a quick payout. She assumed he was just as desperate and transactional as the shady broker who had arranged their union. She braced herself for what lay ahead, imagining a collapsing, run-down shack with no running water, surrounded by barren dirt. When the truck finally slowed down, turning off the main highway and passing underneath a massive weathered archway, Zarya braced herself. She looked up, expecting to see a broken-faced property. Instead, her eyes widened. Sprawling out as far as the eye could see were pristine, perfectly aligned rows of automated greenhouses, high-tech irrigation systems glistening under the afternoon sun, and vast fields of vibrant, healthy crops. Hundreds of acres of prime, impeccably managed agricultural land stretched to the horizon. In the center of it all stood a beautiful, historic two-story farmhouse, surrounded by massive oak trees and a perfectly white picket fence. It wasn't a broken-down shack. It was a sprawling, thriving, multi-million-dollar operation. Malik brought the truck to a gentle stop near the main house. He stepped out, walked around to the passenger side, and opened the door for her. He didn't offer to carry her this time, sensing her need for personal space. Instead, he reached out a calloused hand to help her step down from the high cabin. "Welcome to your new home, Zarya. I know this isn't the life you envisioned, and I know what your stepmother tried to do to you, but you are safe here. No one in this place will ever force you to do anything you don't want to do." Zarya stepped out, her expensive silk wedding dress dragging slightly in the gravel, but for the first time in months, the heavy weight in her chest loosened just a bit. She looked at Malik, searching his face for any sign of mockery, greed, or malice. There was none. His dark eyes held nothing but a profound, quiet respect. He guided her inside the farmhouse, which was warm, clean, and filled with the rich scent of old cedar and fresh coffee. He showed her a beautifully furnished guest room on the second floor. "Take all the time you need to adjust," Malik said softly before closing the door. "We'll talk when you're ready." As the days blended into weeks, Zarya prepared herself to witness the harsh, greedy reality of the man she had been forced to marry. She kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, expecting Malik to demand her inheritance or show the ugly, abusive traits her stepmother had warned her about. But the reality she discovered was entirely different. Malik didn't spend his days counting money or resting on his laurels. Long before the sun even hit the horizon, while the morning mist still clung heavily to the fields, Zarya would hear the low rumble of a tractor engine. Looking out her window, she would see Malik dressed in his rugged work clothes, driving out to the fields alongside the regular laborers. She began to spend her afternoons walking around the perimeter of the massive property, quietly observing the man her stepmother had dismissed as a disposable nobody. One afternoon, a fierce thunderstorm tore through the valley, knocking down a long stretch of heavy wooden fencing near the northern pasture. Instead of calling an expensive contractor or ordering his men to fix it in the pouring rain, Malik went out himself. Zarya watched from the porch as Malik, drenched to the skin, single-handedly lifted the heavy timber posts, hammering them deep into the muddy ground alongside two of his workers. He didn't bark orders, he worked shoulder to shoulder with them, laughing and sharing a flask of warm coffee when the job was done. The true revelation of Malik's character, however, didn't come from his hard work. It came from how he treated the people around him. A few days later, Zarya accompanied Malik to the farm's massive distribution warehouse to pick up some supplies. While there, she noticed an elderly worker named Thomas struggling to lift a heavy crate of machinery from the loading dock. Before Thomas could strain his back, Malik appeared out of nowhere, catching the bottom of the crate and lifting the bulk of the weight himself. "I told you to leave the heavy lifting to the younger guys, Thomas," Malik said with a warm smile, gently patting the older man on the back. Thomas chuckled, his eyes filled with immense gratitude. "Some of us don't know how to slow down, boss," he replied. Later that same week, Zarya accidentally overheard a quiet, tense conversation in the main office between Malik and his head accountant. The accountant was pointing to a financial ledger, looking highly concerned. "Malik, you can't keep doing this. Marcus has been out sick for 3 weeks with a severe respiratory infection. His medical bills are astronomical and his insurance won't cover the specialized treatment. If we pay his full salary and cover his hospital expenses out of pocket without reporting it to the board, it's going to cause a red flag." Malik didn't hesitate for even a second. He closed the financial ledger with a firm thud. "Then don't report it to the board," Malik said, his voice dropping into a tone of absolute authority. "Pay it out of my personal account." Marcus has given 15 years of his life to these fields. His family shouldn't have to choose between putting food on the table and keeping him alive. Do it quietly and make sure his wife knows she doesn't have to worry about a single dime. Zaria stood frozen outside the door, her hand pressed against her mouth as tears welled up in her eyes. This was the man her stepmother hired a shady broker to find. This was the man Cynthia laughed at, calling a low-class, disposable piece of trash. Malik possessed a nobility and strength of character that money could never buy. The audience, watching this quiet unfolding of events, would fall completely in love with who Malik was as a human being long before they ever discovered the massive empire he actually commanded. The ultimate contrast in Malik's double life became glaringly obvious on a Friday evening. A massive, highly publicized agricultural business gala was being held in the city, an event where the elite heads of industry gathered to network. Malik had received a personal gold-embossed invitation as the CEO of Whitmore Agricultural Group. Attending would have solidified his dominance in front of the city's billionaires. Yet when the evening arrived, Malik didn't put on a tuxedo. Instead, he dressed in a clean, simple button-down shirt and drove his rusty pickup truck to a small, crowded community center in the local town. One of his field workers' daughters was graduating at the top of her high school class, and Malik had promised her months ago that he would be there to see her receive her diploma. Zaria sat beside him in the crowded auditorium, watching the pure joy on the field workers' families' faces when Malik stood up and applauded louder than anyone else in the room. He chose the dignity of his community over a room of superficial billionaires. Zaria looked at him under the dim lights of the auditorium, her heart swelling with an emotion she had never felt before. She realized she wasn't trapped in a prison of humiliation. She had been saved by a king in disguise. But back in the city, the dark clouds of Cynthia's financial greed were finally beginning to gather, and a massive storm was about to break. While peace and a quiet, profound respect blossomed at the Whitmore farm, a toxic storm of desperation was brewing back in the city, inside the Fields mansion. Cynthia Reynolds stood in her late husband's study, surrounded by past due notices, legal threats, and terrifying bank statements. The lavish lifestyle she maintained to impress her high society friends had finally caught up to her. Her credit lines were completely frozen, her luxury vehicles were at risk of repossession, and the massive mansion itself was on the verge of foreclosure. But Cynthia wasn't panicking. Instead, she looked at the calendar on the wall and let out a cold, sharp laugh. The marriage registration had officially cleared. According to her calculations, David's unusual will clause had successfully triggered the moment Zaria signed the marriage certificate before her 30th birthday. In Cynthia's mind, Zaria's 50% share of the massive Fields estate had legally transferred directly to her. She believed she was officially saved from bankruptcy. She immediately dialed the number of her primary creditor, a powerful commercial bank that held the massive mortgage on her estate. "I need an emergency meeting with your chief restructuring officer," Cynthia demanded, her voice dripping with unearned arrogance. "My financial situation has changed dramatically. I now possess the full collateral of the Fields estate. Prepare the refinancing documents immediately." The bank executive on the other end of the line paused, his tone completely professional yet chillingly detached. "Mrs. Reynolds, your accounts are handled by our elite institutional wealth division, and a restructuring meeting has already been scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. However, it will not take place at our branch. It will take place at the corporate headquarters of the primary investment firm that recently acquired your debt." Cynthia frowned, her manicured fingers tightening around the phone. "Acquired my debt? What are you talking about? Who bought it?" The executive cleared his throat. "The Whitmore Agricultural Group. They purchased your entire debt portfolio from us 48 hours ago. You will be negotiating directly with their chief executive." Cynthia slammed the phone down, her heart hammering against her ribs, but she quickly forced herself to calm down. She had never heard of the Whitmore Agricultural Group, but the word agricultural made her sneer with absolute disgust. A bunch of corporate farmers, she thought to herself, tossing her head back in derision. Probably some wealthy country bumpkins who struck oil or bought up cheap land. They might have money, but they lack sophistication. They will be incredibly easy to manipulate and intimidate with my high society legal team. She had no idea that the corporate entity she was dismissing was an unstoppable $750 million empire, and she had even less of an idea who sat at the absolute top of it. Back at the farmhouse the evening before the big meeting, Malik entered the kitchen where Zaria was quietly preparing dinner. Over the past few months, the emotional distance between them had completely vanished. Zaria had seen the true depth of Malik's heart, his quiet strength, and his unmatched generosity toward his workers. She no longer saw a poor farmer. She saw a man of immense dignity whom she had grown to deeply respect and care for. Malik walked up to her, his expression unusually serious. He gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Zaria," he said softly, "tomorrow morning I need you to put on your finest dress and come with me to the city. There is a meeting at a corporate conference room and your presence is required." Zaria looked at him, confused by the sudden request. "A corporate meeting? Malik, what's going on? Why would they need me?" Malik gave her a gentle, reassuring smile, though his eyes remained intensely focused. "It's time to close a loop that was opened a very long time ago. Your stepmother thinks she managed to steal your birthright, your dignity, and your father's legacy. She thinks she trapped you. Tomorrow, the truth comes out. Just trust me." Looking into his steady, unyielding eyes, Zaria felt an overwhelming wave of safety. She nodded slowly. "I trust you, Malik, completely." The next morning, the grand conference room on the top floor of the city's most luxurious skyscraper was filled with tension. Cynthia arrived precisely at 9 o'clock, flanked by 3 highly paid corporate attorneys. She wore an expensive designer suit, heavy gold jewelry, and an expression of supreme confidence. She walked into the room expecting to see an older, unrefined country executive whom she could easily bully into a favorable refinancing deal. She took her seat at the massive mahogany table, crossing her legs and looking around impatiently. "Where is the chief executive?" Cynthia snapped at the secretary. "My time is extremely valuable and I will not be kept waiting by a farmer." Before the secretary could even answer, the heavy double doors at the back of the conference room swang open. The sound of firm, rhythmic footsteps echoed across the polished marble floor. Cynthia turned her head, ready to deliver a sharp reprimand, but the words instantly caught in her throat. Her eyes widened in absolute paralyzing shock. Walking into the room, dressed in a flawless, custom-tailored charcoal suit that accentuated his powerful frame, was Malik Whitmore. His hair was perfectly styled, his jaw clean-shaven, and his posture radiated an undeniable, absolute authority. He looked like a world leader, a man who commanded billions with a single nod. But the shock didn't stop there. Walking right beside him, her hand elegantly resting on his arm, was Zaria. She was wearing a stunning, sophisticated emerald gown, her head held high, looking more radiant and confident than she ever had in her entire life. There were no tears, no fear, and no trace of the broken girl Cynthia had kicked out of the mansion months earlier. Cynthia's jaw dropped, her breath catching in her chest as her mind completely short-circuited. She looked from Malik's expensive leather shoes to Zaria's smiling face, utterly unable to process the reality unfolding right in front of her eyes. "You," Cynthia stammered, her voice shaking violently as she pointed a trembling finger at Malik. "What are you doing here? What are you doing here? You're supposed to be in the mud. You're a penniless farmer. Why are you wearing that suit?" Malik didn't answer immediately. He walked to the absolute head of the table, pulling out a chair for Zaria with unmatched grace before taking his own seat. He rested his hands on the mahogany surface, looking directly at Cynthia with a calm, piercing gaze that made her entire legal team visibly uncomfortable. "The term you're looking for, Cynthia," Malik said, his voice deep, cool, and terrifyingly steady. "Chief Executive Officer." The silence in the grand corporate conference room was deafening. Cynthia's primary attorney cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably under Malik's unyielding gaze. He leaned over, frantically flipping through a thick legal binder before whispering into Cynthia's ear. "Mrs. Reynolds, there has been a massive miscalculation on our end. The Whitmore Agricultural Group isn't a small local cooperative. They control over 40% of the supply chain in this region. They didn't just acquire your debt. They bought the entire banking subsidiary that held your mortgage. Effectively, Mr. Whitmore owns everything you owe." Cynthia's face went completely pale, the expensive makeup she wore suddenly looking like a mask on a ghost. She gripped the edge of the mahogany table so tightly her knuckles turned white. No, this is an absolute setup," she erupted, her voice screeching as she tried to regain her footing. "It doesn't matter who you are, Malik. You might have fooled the banks, and you might have fooled this stupid girl, but you didn't fool the law. The moment Zaria signed that marriage certificate before her 30th birthday, 50% of the Fields estate legally transferred to me. I have the paperwork. I have the original will clause." She slammed her manicured hand on the table, glaring at Zaria with venomous triumph. "You thought you were escaping me? You thought you found a savior? You gave up your entire birthright just to live on a farm with a man who hides behind a tailored suit. The money is mine. The mansion is mine. You are penniless, Zaria." Cynthia's attorneys tried to pull her back, visibly horrified by her outburst, but she shook them off, her desperate ego completely taking over. She was grasping at the only shred of power she believed she had left. Malik didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice, nor did he display a single ounce of anger. He simply leaned back in his leather chair, a cold, calculated smile playing on his lips. "Are you finished, Cynthia?" he asked quietly. The sheer calm in his voice was far more terrifying than any shouting match could ever be. He nodded slightly to his chief legal counsel sitting to his right. The attorney immediately opened a sleek leather briefcase, pulled out a certified legal document, and slid it across the smooth wood towards Cynthia's team. "Let's talk about that will clause," Malik continued, his tone smooth and conversational. "You spent the last few months celebrating a financial victory that never existed. You see, when you went to that shady marriage broker in the city's underbelly, demanding a desperate, disposable farmer, you forgot one very important detail. You didn't do your homework. You assumed that because I choose to work my own land, because I drive a tractor and wear muddy boots, I am uneducated. You assumed I was a nobody who could be bought." Cynthia watched the paper slide toward her, her breath catching in her throat. Malik leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table, trapping her with his eyes. "I knew about David's will long before I ever met Zaria. In fact, I knew about the financial loop you were trying to create. But what you failed to realize is that the clause states the inheritance transfers to the surviving spouse only if the marriage is structured under standard civil property distribution without an independent trust protection. Before Zaria and I signed that marriage certificate, I had my legal team establish an ironclad blind matrimonial trust." Cynthia's lead attorney gasped, his eyes widening as he scanned the document. He looked up at Cynthia, his voice trembling. "Mrs. Reynolds, he's right. The trust structure completely isolates Zaria's inherited assets. By law, the marriage did trigger the transfer, but because of the trust's overriding terms, the assets didn't transfer to you as the surviving spouse. They transferred directly into a private entity managed solely by Zaria. The inheritance never touched your legal jurisdiction. You triggered the clause, but you completely bypassed yourself." The words echoed in Cynthia's ears like a series of physical blows. "What?" she whispered, her voice completely breaking. "No, that's impossible. The broker said he was poor. The broker said he needed the money." "The broker works for whoever pays him more, Cynthia. And I have infinitely more resources than you do, Cynthia. I paid his entire firm to give you exactly what you asked for, a farmer in muddy boots. You wanted a performance to humiliate your stepdaughter in front of your elitist friends, and I gave you a masterpiece. But while you were busy laughing on the steps of your mansion, pointing at my truck, my acquisition team was already buying up your defaulted lifestyle bonds, your secondary mortgages, and your outstanding country club debts." Zaria sat quietly beside Malik, watching the entire exchange with a calm, serene dignity. For years, she had been the victim of this woman's psychological warfare. She had listened to the late-night whispers telling her she was a mistake, that she should have disappeared instead of her stepmother's unborn child. She had carried the heavy burden of Cynthia's displaced hatred for over 20 years. But looking at her stepmother now, broken, exposed, and utterly powerless, Zaria felt no hatred. She only felt a profound, liberating pity. Malik reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a final, faded manila folder. He didn't slide it toward the attorneys. Instead, he gently placed it directly in front of Cynthia. "Your financial scheme hasn't just collapsed, it is completely obliterated. As of 9 o'clock this morning, the Whitmore Agricultural Group has officially declined to refinance your debt. Foreclosure proceedings on the Fields mansion begin at noon today. You have exactly 24 hours to pack your designer bags and vacate the property." Cynthia stared at the folder, her hands shaking so violently she could barely open it. "You can't do this to me," she whimpered, the arrogance completely draining from her face, leaving behind a desperate, broken woman. "That house is my life, my status, my friends, everything I built." "You built it on the suffering of an innocent child," Malik interrupted, his voice dropping into a tone of absolute, final judgment. "You spent 20 years punishing Zaria for a life you chose to give up 25 years ago. You thought money could fill the hollow space inside your soul. You were wrong." Malik stood up, adjusting his suit jacket, completely signaling the end of the meeting. He looked down at her one last time. "Open the folder, Cynthia. There's something inside you need to read."
With trembling fingers, Cynthia slowly pulled the single piece of paper from the faded manila folder. She expected to see a legal eviction notice or a cold court order stripping her of her remaining dignity. Instead, her eyes fell upon a piece of heavy, elegant parchment stationery she recognized instantly. It was a letter written in her late husband David's distinct, fluid handwriting. The ink was slightly faded with time, dated just a few short weeks before his sudden passing. Cynthia's breath hitched as she began to read the words silently, her eyes darting across the page as the final crushing truth of her husband's legacy unfolded before her. "My dearest Zaria," the letter began, "if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you, and it likely means that the storm I feared would follow my departure has finally arrived. I knew the bitterness that resided in Cynthia's heart. I spent years praying that love would heal the spaces left by her past, but I realized too late that some wounds run too deep for a husband to mend. I saw how she looked at you, my beautiful daughter, and I knew that her pain would eventually turn into a weapon once my protection was gone." Cynthia stopped breathing, the words cutting through her remaining defenses like a razor. She looked up at Zaria, whose eyes were soft with unshed tears, and then back down at the page. David had known. For all those years, while she thought she was playing the part of the perfect, sophisticated wife, her husband had seen right through her flawless mask. He had seen the toxic resentment she tried so desperately to hide. "I left an unusual clause in my will, not to restrict you, and certainly not to punish you, but to serve as a mirror for Cynthia's true intentions. I knew that if she were driven by greed, she would try to rush you into a marriage to seize your inheritance. But I also knew that God protects the innocent. I placed my trust in a dear, lifelong friend, a man named Malik Whitmore, whose family has guarded the honor of their land and their people for generations. I asked Malik to keep watch over you from afar, and if the day ever came where Cynthia attempted to trap you, to step forward and offer you a true sanctuary. Cynthia's mind completely reeled as she read the name. Malik hadn't just been found by a shady broker. The broker had been a pawn in a much larger, beautifully orchestrated plan of protection. David had set a trap, not for his daughter, but for the woman who had spent decades secretly punishing an innocent child for the choices of her own youth. If you are reading this in his presence, the final paragraph read, I hope you have found someone who sees your worth before your inheritance. I hope you have found a man who understands that the richest soil is the one tended with humility, respect, and love. Cynthia spent her entire life chasing the illusion of wealth, completely blind to the fact that the only true fortune we possess is the family we choose to love. Take care of each other. The letter slipped from Cynthia's hands, fluttering gently onto the polished mahogany table. The devastating realization washed over her like a tidal wave. She had spent years chasing a fortune that was never truly hers, sacrificing her soul, her dignity, and her peace of mind for a lifestyle that had completely vanished in 24 hours. David's final wish for his daughter had already come true, and Cynthia's own greed had been the exact catalyst that brought Zaria and Malik together. She looked across the table at Malik. The man she had ridiculed for his muddy boots, his faded work shirts, and his dusty pickup truck sat before her with an unyielding nobility. He didn't gloat. He didn't celebrate her total financial ruin. His quiet, calm demeanor was the ultimate testament to his absolute power. He had no need to shout or boast because his character spoke louder than any words ever could. Cynthia slowly stood up from her chair, her body feeling incredibly heavy and hollow. Her expensive corporate attorneys quietly gathered their briefcases, refusing to look her in the eye as they prepared to exit the room. They knew the battle was completely over. There were no loopholes left to exploit, no legal maneuvers to execute, and no high society friends left to call. Cynthia walked towards the double doors of the conference room, her footsteps no longer echoing with arrogance, but dragging with the profound weight of a woman who had lost absolutely everything. As the heavy doors closed behind Cynthia, the suffocating tension in the room instantly evaporated, replaced by a deep, peaceful serenity. Zaria looked down at her father's handwritten letter, a single clear tear finally escaping her eye and resting on the parchment. She felt a profound sense of closure, a liberating freedom she hadn't experienced since she was 5 years old. The psychological chains her stepmother had forged for 20 years were completely broken. Malik stood up, walking around the table to stand beside her. He didn't offer a dramatic speech. Instead, he gently placed his hand over hers, his warm, strong fingers grounding her in the present moment. "Are you ready to go home, Zaria?" he asked softly, his voice holding the same gentle warmth that had welcomed her to the farm months ago. Zaria looked up at him, her heart swelling with a deep, unbreakable affection for the man who protected her legacy while teaching her the true meaning of dignity, hard work, and unconditional respect. "Yes, Malik," she said, a brilliant, genuine smile lighting up her face. "Let's go home." Together, they walked out of the skyscraper and down to the bustling city streets. Malik didn't call for a luxury limousine or an expensive private car to transport them. Instead, they walked right back over to his familiar, dusty pickup truck parked quietly at the curb. As they climbed into the cab and the engine rumbled to life, Zarya looked out the window at the towering corporate buildings, realizing that true power doesn't live in a high-rise office or a high-society mansion. True power lives in the integrity of a person's soul, the willingness to work the earth with humility, and the courage to protect the people that matter most. The truck pulled away from the curb, blending seamlessly into the morning traffic as they left the superficial world of the city behind, driving back towards the rolling green hills and the thriving golden fields of the empire they would now build together.